Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is the 28th of January, 2021. Uh, I have heard in the comment section just before I started that this is the 35th anniversary of the Challenger disaster. That sounds right, but what I didn't quite fully realize was apparently yesterday was at least the day calendar of the Apollo 1 fire, and it's less than a week to Columbia, the day anniversary of the Columbia tragedy. So, man, I hadn't realized that all of the American deaths in space occurred in a space of 10 days on the calendar, but that appears to be the case if what I just saw is true. So that's a cheery start to the day, but in any event, it's good to be here, and I'm going to have to make it a short one tonight. And all the regular viewers say I always say that, but I do have to go pick up my little cat tonight who's back at the vet for his blood glucose curves, and the only night they stay open late is Thursday, so they have to keep an eye on him for 12 hours or something like that. Anyway, I'm glad everybody's here. It's certainly an interesting time. No, I am. I don't want to say I'm. Certainly don't want to say I'm overwhelmed. I am a little dazzled. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Um, because everything is so new. Just the outlook on everything is so new. All of the rules that used to seem to make sense in terms of politics and economics now and all the rest of it. It's just everything's up in the air. And I have to tell you this: it, despite all of the crapulence that's coming our way, and it's coming, and it's going to get here. Uh, I I think I don't see how. If let me put it to you this way: if I was a big progressive, I wouldn't be real happy with how things are going because nothing seems to be falling in place. Everything seems to be chaotic, and while I'm generally not a fan of chaos, I'd much rather see that than have them swiftly and efficiently execute their plan to destroy what's left of freedom in this country. So there's um, all kinds of things going on. I mentioned a few times in the comments on the forum at billwhittle.com, and also I think in a couple places anyway. On Saturday, I go to Ramona. I'm not going to have a show tomorrow morning if you didn't get the notice. But Ramona's my favorite event of the year. I've done 7 out of the last 8 years, I want to say there. Really know that audience very, very well. Um, and and I'm going to run all of this stuff kind of past a live audience. And these guys are hardcore patriots, but much more importantly, I consider that, I don't know how to explain it. Maybe it's just because I've been there every year, but I consider that one audience and that one venue to be like friends of mine. So I've always had a chance to just kind of go out on a limb and kind of, break whatever weirdness I had in mind for that particular day. Um, there's good news that Julius passed his MEPS and he signed the contract and was sworn in today. Hooray! Army Infantry. Our friend Julius, American who was born overseas. Very proud of you, young man. Very, very proud of you. Um, so, the talk all right now is all about this GameStop thing. And, and while there's been all kinds of different commentary about it, um, the one thing that seems to be pretty much universal across the board on both big liberals and big conservatives. Hang on a second. There's something here. Hang on a second. Okay. So I did a show about this. I was supposed to have. I uploaded it today at noon, and I just forgot to activate it because Google holds it until the ads are approved, and you can't turn off the mid-roll ads until then, until it's up and processed. And I just plain forgot it. It should have been up 5 hours ago. Called Preoccupy Wall Street, and I said I didn't know exactly what was happening there. I thought maybe they were just trolling them. We see here in the comment section that this thing was a lot more kind of planned than I originally thought. That's fine. Nevertheless, I think my main point in that video is not only stands but is actually amplified. That the market is not prepared for people to act irrationally for a rational reason. That the market is not prepared for people to not act in their own immediate self-interest in terms of making their personal profit. That if you coordinated something on kind of a higher level, especially if you were ready to lose the money, then really astonishing things could happen. But the one thing I was saying earlier is that all across the political spectrum that I get to see anyway, everybody is really kind of cheered that the little guys made a hunk of money off of the big guys. And furthermore, this business of shutting down the trading, this business of the Robinhood app basically shutting down and all of that is really, really, really resonating with people. I mean, all across the spectrum, people are angry at the system, and the anger is the same. It is, okay, I get it. So leverage the hell out of things and then make billions of dollars off of investors who really just don't really know what they're doing. And then, nevertheless, when those very same kind of regular Joes kind of turn things around and take you for billions, then all of a sudden we have to throw the circuit breakers and just stop trading immediately. We're losing money, and we're losing money big time, and we're losing money big time to a bunch of yahoos, I'm not saying they're Trump supporters, but they're certainly not inside. And this is what I'm interested in. This is another example of that kind of realignment that I'm trying to get my little fingers around. And that is the idea that if we can abandon the old labels, which I don't think really serve us anymore, we can find alliances in places that we never expected them. And as I've said, you can't throw such a big net that you throw out your own values, that you bring people into your movement that are antithetical to what you believe. But you can certainly get people who you wouldn't normally assume would be allies. I've always been pro-business, and to a large degree I've always been kind of pro-Wall Street, only because of the things that were leveled against it in terms of, well, we have to regulate this and we have to do this and we have to do that. And, obviously there are rules that are in place, and if a trading company violated those rules, they need to go to jail for breaking the law. But I've never been one of those, oh, it's the 1%, that's what it is. I've never been one of the 1%ers. No, I'm working real hard to be a 1%er. And you'd be shocked to know how many people are actually 1%ers. But in any event, it's really like it's a major seismic event, and I think it has scared the living daylights out of the financial establishment, because it's shown them what regular people can do. Not if they, and this is, I think, is the important point. It's not like there was one guy out there. Well, maybe this is the point, but it's not like, hey, somebody had a brilliant angle on a brilliant stock or something. It's that people knew what was going on, and they kind of combined and took this risk together, and wow. I'm just reading about the details of the amount of money that is actually owed, that they're required to pay, and I know I'm kind of scattershot with this because it's kind of happening to me in real time. But the fact of the matter is, it's not. I think what people are really opened up about today, I think people are really, really opened up about one thing. It's not so much that people lose money to Wall Street investment firms, although people have been angry about that. To me, that's the market. They're the professionals. And it's not even so much that the little guys got a chance to take a big bite out of the big guys. What everybody seems to be genuinely outraged about is that when it started to happen, that's when the big guys said, we're closing our tent and we're going home. And there's so much comment about, oh, I thought you were a free market. Capitalism. Well, the big trading houses are saying we'd love the free market so long as we're making money off of it. If we're losing money off of it, then we've got to shut it down. And where is it? JWTT Kuda said it's not a blow to free market capitalism, it's a blow to crony capitalism. And I think that's really it. And I think that's got to be a major, major, major focus of what we're trying to do going forward, is to make that distinction as much as possible. To make the distinction that a free market is a free market, and that subsidies for corporate subsidies are as bad, and for the same reasons as perpetually subsidizing an underclass that is utterly dependent on other people, and on and on and on. But again, this all is happening so quickly, and it's great that it's happening quickly. I'm very happy that it's happening quickly. Right now, the challenge for me is to find a way to make sense out of all of this and then turn it into actionable, items. And that's not super easy. To be fair, I mean, as we record this on Thursday, the 28th, we're 8 days past the inauguration, and it's kind of tough to have a detailed plan of action in 8 days, especially when the situation is this fluid. But what I do find very, very interesting is that Joe Biden came into office through means foul or fair, and I have an opinion on that one. And instead of presiding over the Great Reset, we find that he has to have that during his inauguration, there's concertina wire in Washington, and that the entire town is under siege. This thing with the market is now, I may be wrong about this, but the thing I think that scares people about this, that scares the insiders about this, is that I think, if I understand it correctly, I think it's repeatable. In other words, the idea that people could get together outside the market and then basically do things that the market is not prepared for. It's not prepared for rational irrationality. And I think this scares the living daylights out of them, because that means that the opportunities are kind of incredible. And as I did point out, because again, I'm very sorry it got posted late. I wanted that one up early today. I'm really upset about me just plain missing that. But in that one I did today, Preoccupy Wall Street, I basically said, look, if this is what can get done with I don't know how many people on Reddit, but basically the story is that one guy put in the first hunk of money, $65,000 in that general ballpark, and then mentioned it on Reddit, and a lot of people said they put their $600 stimulus checks into it. So, okay. But just for a second, imagine what could happen if you took basically the available spending money of the people who supported Donald Trump. You're talking about 100 million people. 100 million people. And in a genuinely free market, 100 million people acting in concert could do some very serious damage to some people who really need to be seriously damaged. And the best part of this is you do it through actual, genuine free market economy. And furthermore, it's not illegal, and nor is it immoral. The entire market functions on the greater fool theory, right? I mean, to the limited degree of my financial knowledge, it's basically what essentially almost any sale is. You can make a trade where you go to McDonald's and you say, I want a hamburger, and they say, well, I want $3, and both sides are richer for it. That I'm real familiar with. But in the case of stocks, I think the entire idea is you buy something at a certain price, you watch it go up, and when you sell it, you are counting on the greater fool. You believe it's time to sell the stock for whatever reason, and somebody's going to buy it, presumably, because they're not as savvy as you are. If you have an entire army of people and their money, then the greater fool theory falls apart, because it turns out that it's not a greater fool at all. It is it is what it appears to be to me is a group of people who understand the rules and were willing to sacrifice their own immediate gains and not do what was best for them in terms of getting out when they were supposed to get out. It seems to me that this is a case of people behaving in such a way. Now, this is a really good question. KJ Drag One says, "Do we want to set a precedent of being able to financially target specific groups? Feels like the left will be happy to ruin their political enemies with this." To be honest with you, Drag, I'm tired of them using this weapon exclusively. I'm really tired of them shutting down conservative businesses and lawfare and all the rest of it. I've really, really had enough of it. And I think we're at the point now where we are really, really having to look at finding new weapons and new tactics. And my personal feeling on this is, if it is legal and it doesn't violate our principles, then okay. I'd be all over target. I would love to be able to take a strike at the big tech companies and hurt them financially. So Abjay says, and this seems right, it says basically this is going to kill shorting stocks, which takes away a big way to make money. Okay. At this point, I'm really looking at things very differently. I really am looking at this as the people versus a system. And I think everybody out there is a little bit tired of the system. To me, it seems that at this point in the game, if you're going to recover the government and the country, you got to start thinking about out-of-the-box solutions. In other words, the politicians that got us into this mess aren't going to get us out of this mess. And the economics that had made, Google and Apple and Facebook so powerful and so wealthy, we're not going to beat them by continuing to play the game that they're very, 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 very good at. This kind of thing. Look, if the left is upset about it and they're saying that this is white supremacy, then you know you're on the right side. This is a special forces raid with a tactical nuke. That's what it looks like to me. Just what? We didn't think that the proles could do that. We didn't think the proles were smart enough to do that. Well, turns out we are. And so now you have to ask yourself, if the GameStop phenomenon exposes a weakness in the system, then how many other weaknesses are there that can be exploited in order to regain freedom? I don't like doing this. This doesn't make me happy. It's not my first choice of occupation. But here we are, right? I mean, if you're going to have your election system stolen, and whether the voting fraud was decisive or not, when Twitter has the ability to bury a story, that's a perfect example. Let's just take Twitter and Facebook's clear as the nose on all of our faces. If Twitter and Facebook have the power to bury stories, to make conservative political groups disappear a few days before the election, all of it, if they have that kind of power, then we have to fight that kind of power. We have to find asymmetric, that's the word I'm looking for. We have to find asymmetric ways to fight these people. And this, to me, is very exciting because that's what it looks like exactly. This looks like a really, really interesting form of asymmetric warfare, where the people with very few resources are able to have a very large effect on their opponents because they've changed the game. They've just moved it off the table. We're not playing checkers anymore. Now we're playing three-dimensional chess. I don't believe, in fact, I'm quite certain, if you really, now we're really getting down to brass tacks here. Let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that this became a kind of a financial battlefield where these kind of things were going to happen in the future. Let's just say that's possible. I personally think that conservatives are far more unified about this than progressives or liberals are. I don't see. I've never seen them willing to put their own skins on the line, ever. I've seen them spend money on social change that the right has not spent on until recently. But nevertheless, I think that if it was here again, it's all coming to me in real time. So I'm sorry if I'm being so erratic and kind of scattershot with this. But if we're talking about taking our own money and putting it to this kind of activity, I think that the left would blink before the right did. I'm utterly convinced of it because we're a lot more desperate than they are. Let's just face it. I mean, we realize now that we are really fighting for the soul of this country. And when people are as cynical and heartbroken and enraged and just generally furious and hopeless and depressed as they are because the system failed us, then it's time to start looking at ways to understand why the system failed us. I think the system as written is essentially perfect. I think the Constitution is essentially perfect. I think the idea of free markets is essentially perfect. And I think all the trouble we've gotten into is a result of people going in and either changing the rules or ignoring them or whatever. But certainly we have been asleep at the switch. We have not been able to we have not been willing or able to guard the gates of our own republic. And so there you go. What I think is very interesting about this, too, is the idea, there's one of my favorite aspects of at least the U.S. military when it's working well, and I'm not saying we're the only people that do this, but nevertheless, if I was the Secretary of Defense or if I was the President, I would absolutely really step up this idea of red force, of OPFOR, opposing forces. I would have the best people we have, our best special forces guys. I'd have our best sub commanders. I'd have our best, I bet, everybody. I'd find the best people in the military, and I would have them attack our own military in any way possible. Not just attack our own military, attack our own country. I don't mean really, obviously. I'm talking about looking for weaknesses. That, to me, is the essence of not only of preparedness and victory. It's the essence of survivability of a civilization. Get your guys to find out where the weaknesses are before the other guys find out where the weaknesses are. I think that's really, really important to have that kind of thing in the military where SEALs are trying to break into Air Force supply bases, whatever. If you put the best minds on figuring out how to bring the country down in terms of practically doing it, then you expose the weaknesses in the system, and then you can start to defend them. Although, the just as one example, the electrical grid and its vulnerabilities are one of those things. When it goes down, when it happens, we are going to be saying, well, we knew it for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and we didn't do anything about it because it didn't happen today. So anyway, it's very, very interesting times. And this kind of thing is something I'm going to be looking at very carefully, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what other people of like mind have to say about that. So since I'm going to have to go relatively early tonight, let's jump ahead and get to the questions on Facebook, shall we? Been working like a rented mule here, and genuinely happy about it. We did 2 more of the Virtue Signal shows today. Unfortunately, since we're still working out the technical details with Zoe, we had to go with our backup video, which is not the quality I was hoping for. But the conversation was good, and I suppose that's really what most people are interested in. So let's see some comments, and we'll do it again. Yeah, and Dave Big Booty says, will we have a chance to ask questions on BillWhittle.com again? Yes, we absolutely will. There is so much in motion, and I'm just trying my very best to catch up, because I also have to keep these plates spinning, in terms of getting closer to 3 shows a day out now. So we will see. Okay, got it. As usual, we got 3 Eric Blake questions at the top, and I'm going to find out which one. All right, we'll take this one. So Eric says, hey, Bill, here's a question about the Friends of Abe, the secret society of Hollywood conservatives, which may or may not exist. I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of that organization. Not going to ask if it still exists or not, wink, but the question is what they were. But the question is whether what they were is what they should have been. I've long felt that such a secret society should be a network where all the conservatives, closeted or not, should work to ensure security for each other's roles and jobs for each other's, A-list or otherwise, in order to combat the new blacklist, essentially take a cue from the left during the old blacklist, only more so. What say you? So I just had a strange flash of a connection to this whole GameStop thing. What I may have seen, had I been to any of those meetings, was large numbers of people who were facing this kind of prisoner's dilemma sort of thing, who wanted to speak up about their politics, had remained quiet about their politics, understood that remaining quiet about their politics led to even more repression and more assumption that everybody that they're talking to is a big old liberal. And they understood that being quiet made it worse, but they also understood that if they spoke up first, then they're going to be the ones who are going to pay the price. There are people in show business, and I'm not saying I've seen any of these people in person or not, but there are people in show business who are large enough and powerful enough that they become forces of nature and nothing can really touch them. And Clint Eastwood is a good example of that. Clint Eastwood can get on stage and talk to an empty chair named Barack Obama because he's Clint Eastwood, and he is in such demand as a director, and his movies do so well and are so well made and make so much money that it doesn't matter if people know that he's a conservative. Clint Eastwood can get anybody in a movie he wants. Doesn't matter how liberal they are, because he's a force of nature in show business. But the people we were dealing with on a constant level, and we're talking about thousands of people, we're basically just journeyman workers, editors and grips, a lot of stunt people, lots of actors, but mostly bit actors, lots of faces you've seen before, but coming in with stories of how once somebody found out that they were conservative, then the phone just didn't ring, and so on. When I say my favorite story, I mean the one that stays with me the longest is one where a pretty famous actor who's been in a, you certainly know his name, and I'm just not at liberty to say the name. I'm sorry, I just can't do that. But somebody you would certainly recognize was in a scene with Donald Sutherland. Now, I don't mind mentioning Donald Sutherland because he's the bad guy in this story, and Donald Sutherland is a raving left-wing lunatic. And this actor I'm talking about had always admired Donald Sutherland, always thought he was one of his favorite actors, and he had arrived. Now, he wasn't a bit actor at the time. The guy I'm talking about was an established name, and they had a scene together, and had a couple scenes together, and it was the high point of his career in terms of his personal, satisfaction, because Sutherland was talking to him, treating him like an equal, and they're acting together, and it was like a dream come true. Well, it turned out that on the last day, Sutherland found out that this guy I'm mentioning was a conservative, and during the climactic scene that they had together, when they're both on camera, Sutherland read his lines, but he wouldn't look at him. The camera lines were such that he could get away with that. He just read the lines into space and just pretended he wasn't there. And that's the kind of thing that we heard all the time. Just the most petty, low, vindictive kind of stuff. Now, this guy was fearless. I will tell you that during a number of the election cycles, that basically Hollywood conservatives went to Republican candidates and said, "Let us help you." To which they replied, "No, we got this." That was the case in 2008 and 2012. And let me just see how much of this I can actually say. And I have it on excellent authority that I'm sorry to have to be this pissy about it, but I really do have to. There are things that I can say and things that I can't say, and I got to be careful about that. But I do know for a certain fact that a leading Republican had his or her campaign manager come out and talk to Hollywood conservatives, and there was a small luncheon held. They wanted to get some of that on board, and there was another candidate out there, and basically the campaign manager for this leading Republican candidate said verbatim that that he thought Hillary Clinton would be a much better president than this other Republican. And you hear that and you just want to say, okay, it really is. This is an establishment candidate talking about another establishment candidate. The rest of the country is divided up into sides, and these insiders are basically saying, yeah, we'd much rather have a Republican campaign manager saying, we'd much rather have Hillary Clinton be president than this other Republican, and talking about what a great job she would do and all the rest of it. So when you see things like, when you see things like the failure to repeal Obamacare, and when you see things like the 10 Republicans voting for a second impeachment less than a week before the president leaves office anyway, and without any evidence or anything, you realize that these people are not on our side. They're not on our side. They're not fighting for us. They're using us to get elected, and we elect them because we seem to think that they are less bad than the other guys, and I suppose that's true. But they're not on our side. You can't count on them, and they will fold in a storm. And so we tried this with the Tea Party. The whole thing about the Tea Party was we need to find new politicians. Let's find some new politicians. And they went to the degree that it succeeded, they went to Washington as politicians, and next thing you know, they're worried about re-election. Where did I hear this? Oh, this I can tell you. This I can tell you. I heard this firsthand. I just trying to get these stories straight. Yesterday, I heard firsthand from someone who had a close relative get elected and go to Washington. No, that's not right. They had somebody who had access to John Boehner when John Boehner was Speaker of the House, and this person went and asked John Boehner for advice about a candidate, a new freshman candidate that they liked. So basically, this guy walked up to John Boehner and said, "Hey, I really like this guy. He's already elected. It's already done." And he's full of ideas and is a really staunch conservative and really wants to make a difference and bring some freedom back to the country. So, Mr. Speaker, what do you think he ought to concentrate on? And without missing a beat, Boehner said, "Re-election," is the first word out of his mouth and the only word out of his mouth, basically. What should you worry about when you go to Washington? What is your concern when you enter the People's House? Your first concern, is it obeying the Constitution? Is it returning freedom to the American people? Is it no, re-election? Boom, that's it. Period. And when I heard that, I can't tell you I wasn't surprised, but I was shocked. It's just terrible. So I can also tell you on this subject, and this is probably the last thing I can say about this. Hang on a second, let me think about this. Yeah, I'm so tempted to give you the name because he's not with us anymore. He has flown west, but in any event, I can't tell you the name. But I was in a relatively small group of people, and we were having this conversation, and the Republicans were saying, "Hey, we really want conservatives on the stage. We want to put a bunch of conservative actors on the stage." And this guy, who had the ability to look at you, and if he stared at you, he's a great guy. Really loved him. One of my favorite actors. But he could. I told him to his face. I said, "You could curdle water." And he looked at this person and said, "If I go out there and put my ass on the line, are you going to back me?" And the guy said, "Oh yeah, no, the Republicans will be right there." He said, "I didn't say that." I said, "Well, are you personally gonna be out there and back me?" And we saw a couple of conservatives kind of come out and start pushing for the candidates, and they just left them out to dry. And those conservative celebrities got the message, so they basically just said, "Okay, got it." It's really disgraceful, Eric, and it is. You can't get out of the problems that we got into by the same means that we got into them. So, anyway. Merlin, my friend Merlin Whittle, do you think the ACLU is dedicated enough to civil liberties to start helping our side as the Democrats bulldoze the Constitution? Or will they turn a blind eye and remain loyally partisan? Oh, Merlin, you sweet summer child. Of course they're going to turn a blind eye. The ACLU at one point, I never supported the ACLU and never was on their side, but certainly whatever pretensions they might have had about being fair is long gone. And the same for the Southern Poverty Law Center. These are basically, they're not just propaganda outlets. These are weaponized agencies that are using the public megaphones. They're using peer pressure, and they're using legal action to silence conservative opposition. There's nothing about them that has the slightest shred of integrity. Glenn Greenwald is the only person I've seen, and bless him, who is consistently saying what is happening is just plain tyranny and dictatorship and very, very, very dangerous. Good for him, man. And I'm pleased to see somebody doing it, but he's the only one that comes to mind. No, it's not. There's no way that these things are going to happen. It's going to be us, and it's either going to be us or it's not going to be anybody. I don't expect anything to happen in terms of existing safeguards. I don't have confidence in anything anymore. And for a lot of people, that sounds like I'm done. I'm giving up. To hell with it. I'm not. I'm saying precisely the opposite. When I say I don't have confidence in anything anymore, I don't have confidence in the FBI. I don't have confidence in the electoral system. I don't have confidence in the ACLU. I don't have confidence in the Supreme Court. I don't have confidence in anything anymore. I don't trust any of it. They have destroyed my trust, and I came in with a lot of trust and a lot of love for this country's government, and I felt like I was backing the team that was in the right. And over the course of the last 20 years, I've just simply watched each one of these things destroy my confidence in them. I remember saying, it seemed like it was just a few months before the COVID-19 outbreak, that I thought the Center for Disease Control was one of the great examples of what the federal government should do and what it should be. And then I watched them destroy my trust as well. I don't trust public health officials. I don't trust governors. I don't trust any of them. I'll tell you who I do trust as an institution, and I think this is the only one that comes to mind off the top of my head. The only American institution that I continue to trust is the sheriffs of the country. Those guys, for some reason, have always stood out to me as being kind of like the only real holdouts for liberty. And I know there are plenty of bad sheriffs out there. I'm not betting a lot of money on the sheriff of L.A. County Sheriff being a big champion of freedom. But when I do see people standing up and protecting the rights of citizens, then I come to sheriffs. Now, of course, here's Tom Bombadil saying sheriffs should not be trusted. Take it from a cop. So what do I know? That's how I feel. And if you knew Arpalo, you'd never trust a sheriff again. So apparently I was wrong about that one. Something else chiefs and sheriffs are major thrills. So I stand corrected. I don't believe in anything anymore. I don't have any holdouts. There are no places where I can put my confidence or my trust. And the 2 or 3 sheriffs who are stand-up guys and have proven it are obviously flukes. That's fine. I'm not crying about it. It doesn't surprise me. It disappoints me, but I'm so used to being disappointed now that I'm kind of past it. You know, I'm kind of past it. I know they're politicians in big cities. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the guys out in the country that have consistently said we're not going to enforce this law. Those guys. In fact, I mean, really, to me, all the big cities, all the population centers are governed by police force. So I'm really talking about guys out there. City sheriffs, I'm sure, just as bad as the corrupt city politicians that back them. But I'm talking about the guys out in the country. All right, let's see. Do another 10, 15 minutes, I guess. Let's see, I'm just trying to find something here. Where did it go? Oh, Sarge. He's Sarge. Sarge 56. How do we get the teachers' unions to go back to work? Are you really completely sure that's what you want them to do? Sarge, I'm sure if you're wanting your kids to go back to school and you want your teachers' union to go back to school, then the one thing I can draw a fairly solid conclusion on is that you don't live in Los Angeles. In fact, your avatar is a Texas flag and a Texas state outline. So as somebody who's in Los Angeles, I don't want the teachers' unions to ever go back to work. When you twist this Rubik's Cube around and line things up in a different way, you can start to say, well, did this problem really start in the journalism schools or did it start in education? That's kind of a, would you rather have your eyes gouged out or would you rather have your tongue burned off? I guess I'll go with the tongue on that one. But both choices are bad. And so journalists were the first to be corrupted by this left-wing philosophy. But educators are, to me, they're the radicals. When I think of who is spreading this virus, who is the most ideologically infected class in the country, I'm going to come down with professors in universities, followed by teachers a little lower than that. That's not to say there aren't good teachers out there. Obviously there are. And there are some teachers out there who have the courage to stand up against what is becoming ever more of a totalitarian echo chamber. But, you know, the teachers union in California, LA Unified School District, is the largest financial supporter of the people that are the most tyrannical and insane in the country. So I think that, I hope that with all of this turbulence, this social turbulence, I hope, because I know for a fact, I know for a fact that all across the political spectrum, people don't like the social justice warriors. They don't like politically correct speech. They don't like constantly being told what to say. They don't like having to watch what they say. They don't like having to watch what they think. They don't like hearing that their kids are going to be tormented because they wore an unofficially approved Halloween costume. They don't want woke politics in their movies or in their television or in anything else. This is absolutely indisputable as far as I'm concerned. And I'm just wondering if somebody jiggles the table enough, if there's not going to come a point where there's people talk about like a national revival, and America's had a number of these religious revivals that change the course of the country. And I'm not really talking about that. In fact, I think that is the least likely scenario. But I do wonder if there may not come a point when there is a national American, one giant national American FU. You know, just that. Just kind of like, you know what? F you. I'm done with it. I don't care what you say anymore. I'm not going to be beholden to this. This is just plain dumb, and I'm not going to put up with it. And I feel very, very, very certain that if somebody were to be digitally crucified, you said something that has upset the woke mob, and so now we're going to bring the spotlight of the world on you through social media. And we're going to harass you at home, and we're going to make sure that every effort is made to fire you. All of your sponsors, we will cut your sponsors off. All of this stuff. I think that if somebody were to do this, especially if it was somebody relatively famous, and they were expected to go down the ceremonial path to the woke abattoir and do their public apology tour, and I have so much left to learn, and I never realized all of that stuff that they're expected to do. I think if one of them were just to stand up and say, you know what, just go F yourself. I don't care what you say. Just F you. I think people would just cheer. I think that 80% of the country would cheer. And so I feel like, and I hope I'm right about this, that this is kind of like a spring that is just being continually compressed, and that here's what I hope it is. I hope it's like a mousetrap. That's what I would like it to be. I'd like the country to be in a situation like a mousetrap where there's so much of this energy stored now, and there's so much disgust and so much energy available to flip all of this stuff. And the thing about the mousetrap analogy I like is that it just takes just the tiniest little touch. That it doesn't. That it's just on a hair trigger, and that's what I hope is the case. So we'll see. I'll do one more, and then I'm afraid I'm going to have to go. Let's see. I'll take this one, and it's back to Merlin again, but Merlin's a great guy, because I think this is an interesting question. PragerU and other conservatives have been ranting about the distinction of leftists and liberals, but is it really our job to make the distinction when liberals have not only failed to do so, but embraced the commie bastards for decades? There are times when I am sailing between Scylla and Charybdis here, where if I go too far in one direction, I'm going to lose the point, and if I go too far in the other direction, I'm going to be devoured by my own, family. When I talk about dropping labels, conservatives have been so badly screwed for so long that when you talk about alliances and when you talk about reconfiguring things and looking at things in a different way, I understand this dynamic so well. Conservatives have been so screwed for so long. We've seen so much happen, and we have seen so much damage to the things that we love, that when we hear that, what a lot of us hear is, okay, so you've also surrendered. You've given up. You're a cuck. You're this. You're that. You've joined the other team. You're in on the. I understand the dynamic, and 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 yet I have to fight against that dynamic because I don't have the luxury of hurt feelings anymore. We have got to eliminate the existing labels because they do not serve us anymore. There are, when I say that, people say, so you're saying we abandon our values? I didn't say abandon our values. I said abandon the labels. There are so many things constrained in the labels. There are so many bad things locked into the label, and there are so many good things locked out of the circle of the label. And so when I say get rid of the labels, I'm saying that so that the entire board can be realigned and not move towards a more liberal position. That's the exact opposite of what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to get rid of the labels so that the membrane becomes permeable, so that the allies, the natural allies, the people who love American freedom, who've always felt that Republicans were this or that, or just never could vote Republican, I want those people inside. And the people who are rhinos, or people who basically will do or say anything, I want those people outside. I don't think that these things are helping us. And the one thing that is guaranteed to get people in their trenches is the label. If you say, well, Democrats do this, and it's true, but if you say that, then if you voted Democrat, you have locked yourself into your trench. Your rifles are up, your bayonets are on, and you're going to die in that trench. When if you had not used that label, you probably would have found that they're completely in favor of things like, no, I don't want my data shared, and yes, I don't think the FBI should be snooping around and launching their own investigation. All of it, you could find most people are in favor of most of the things that we agree with, and they have had so much screen time. They've had so much screen time. They've had the megaphone for so long. They've done such a tremendous job of throwing mud, and mud's the least of it, on who we are, that you really kind of need to just kind of take a shower and come out of the shower with an entirely new look, not new values. This is the operational issue right here. This is the operational issue. This is a great point. Omega Yang 802. Can we just have you guys change your names to like Bob or number 17 or something to make it easier for me with my eyesight? He writes in the live comment, he says, when someone says they love, the Americans who love what the country is or love what they want to make it. You don't even have to add that second part. You can ask somebody, do you love America? And people will either say yes or no. And more young people are saying, no, I'm ashamed of it. That's because that's what they're taught and trained to do. I've never been unable to have a conversation that didn't start out with, I love America, well, I love America too. Now, every time that has happened, I have always been able to have an interesting conversation and learn something about it. And this is not something that what we refer to as the left. I'm going to try and break myself of my own habits. This is not something that anti-Americans can do. If you asked AOC, do you love America? She would immediately start talking about what's wrong with America. And an analogy I've used before, which I think is a pretty strong one, is simply this. If I went up to you and said, do you love your wife? And your reply was, that whore? Are you kidding? She's an emotional wreck. She's an alcoholic. She always has been. Her entire family drinks. She can't handle money. She can't drive. She's utterly helpless. She's mean-spirited and wrong, and she's on me all the time. She never ever stops badgering me. It's just unbearable. And then you say, well, so you obviously don't love your wife. And then they say, how dare you? How dare you say that I don't love my wife? Well, if I ask you whether you love your wife or not, and the first thing you do is list all of the things that are wrong with her, then I'm going to go with, no, you really don't. You're telling yourself you do, and you may actually believe you do, but as people have pointed out, what you really love is either the person that you and she used to be, or the person that you either pretended to be, or whatever, but you don't love that person. If somebody asks me, do you love my wife? My answer is yes. And there's no qualification on it. None. Yes, very much. If people want details, I'll give it to them. But when you ask people, do you love this country? And you get any answer other than yes, then you know. And when you find, if you take the labels away, you will find huge numbers of people who voted for Joe Biden. And if you ask them, do you love America? Many of them will say yes. And those people should not be our enemies, especially when you consider how much of the information that they're making their decisions on has been colored from the day they were born. That's what I mean by getting rid of the labels so that you can keep the values. And that, I think, is part of this big puzzle. They're not capable of it, by the way. If you think that the real leftists, the people who we really need to be fighting against, and there are tens of millions of them in the country, no question about that. If you think that those people can say, yes, I love America without comment in order to sneak under the door, then I think that's just wrong. One of the things I would often do in a public speaking event, because most of the public speaking events that I do, or did anyway before this virus came along, virtually all of them would start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And usually the first words out of my mouth would be, by the way, I know, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the reason we start these meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance is not just because we love America, it's actually a security measure. Because if there are any leftists in the room, when they hear the Pledge of Allegiance, their skin's going to burst into flames and a giant sulfurous pit is going to open up and claws are going to drag them back down to where they came from. But they can't do it. They really can't do it. And so that's the kind of bellwether we should have. Because if you can get to, yes, I love this country. I love it. I love everything it stands for. Those people can be reasoned with. And you may find, well, I'm voting for Democrat because of this. Well, okay, why? Well, because I think this should be fixed. Well, I think it should be fixed too. Now you're talking about practical solutions. You're not talking about opposing values. You're not talking about people who are your enemies. You're talking about different opinions on how to get to the same place. And the ability to identify what that same place is the challenge. And this is what I find myself working on and thinking about all the time. What, if you were to get rid of the old labels and the membrane of the label, the iron hoop around the barrel, so that, okay, you're a conservative, all of these assumptions are made about you inside and all of the assumptions are made about people outside that iron hoop. If you get rid of that, I'm not even saying you get rid of the hoop. I'm saying you lift it up, you let all of these pieces kind of move around a little bit, and then you say, okay, who loves this country? And then you put a hoop around those people. Then you're getting to the kind of things I'm talking about. Or at least dimly seeing on the wall of the cave a whole 8 days into this catastrophe. And you know what? The 2020 election may end up being the best thing that happened to this country. It's entirely possible. In fact, I wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing and saying the things I'm saying if I didn't, on some level, believe that the catastrophe of 2020, the brazenness of it, was actually the slap in the face, the douse of cold water that this country needed to wake up before it became absolutely too late. Some people think it's too late already. I'm not one of those people. But it is entirely possible if we do something to do this. I just want to deal with one issue here. from a comment section. It's time for the divorce. I used to think that too. Before the violence starts, I used to think exactly that. I'll tell you why I don't think that anymore. I think I mentioned last show that you could have people who you're ready to kill, people who are just ready to kill politically, and you find yourself in the football stadium with them, and you're both Bears fans, and across the way are Packers fans, and in the Packers stands are Republicans and Democrats, only they're not Republicans and Democrats now. Now they're Packers fans versus Bears fans. And so when you say you want a divorce from them, it's not necessarily that you want a divorce from that particular person so much as you want a divorce from that idea, from that policy, from those choices. And if you were to take the labels off, you might find that a large number of people, not all of them by any means, there are people out there, tens of millions of people who hate this country and want it destroyed, period. They absolutely hate it, absolutely want it destroyed, doing it entirely on purpose. They're not, there is nothing that they will not do to destroy this country. Those people have to be fought and ideologically destroyed. But you also have to have the ability, and you need to have it's not even compassion, it's just fundamental wisdom. It's not even wisdom, it's common sense. It's common sense. If I took one of your children and put them in a room and showed them only the pictures I wanted them to see, and only the stories I wanted to tell, and only the news that I wanted to show them, I don't care how well raised they are. I don't care if it could be the most patriotic, all-American person in the world. You give me a couple of months or a year at the most with anybody like that, and if I could control their information, I would change. You'd be able to change their mind. And when you have people who've never heard the story, there are young people out there, not even so young anymore, they're in their 30s now, think that the entire history of the United States is slavery. That slavery only existed in the United States. The only time it ever existed in the world was in the United States in the South. That it is a sin unique to America. And if you tell them that of the total slaves taken out of Africa during the 400 years of the slave trade, you tell them that something like 9 to maybe 11% of the total Africans taken out of Africa came to America, they will fall down. Fall down. It's all very challenging. And it's, like I said, it's not overwhelming. It is, I don't even know what the word for it is. Anyway, I'm going to go pick up my little cat now. As always, it's great to see the Stratosphere Lounge gang. I think I'll have a lot to talk about next time. Having had a chance to walk this dog in front of live audience, see what they say, and then I will come back and do the work. I'm not going to be here. I'm going to take a day off tomorrow because I'm gone all day Saturday, and I'd like to remain married, frankly. I'll be back on Monday. I'll have some news, and we'll take it from there. And to all of you, speaking of which, hang on one second. I'll be right with you. Hi, honey.
Hi, Billy. This is did you take Ben from?
No, I'm about to pick him up. I'm still in the last few seconds of the Stratosphere Lounge. So while you're not on camera, they, yeah, I talked to them earlier, and they said they're open till 8. So I'm wrapping up.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. No problem. I'll see you soon, my love. All right. Bye bye. I'm going to go now. Anyway, you never, ever, ever not take a call from somebody like that unless you absolutely cannot. So we'll see you next week right here on the Stratosphere Lounge. Thanks for joining us. And again, thanks for all the new members. And as always, thanks to the people who've been here from the beginning. So you guys have a great evening. We'll talk again next Thursday.